Fabulous, fabulous, fabulous. Thank you. And by the way, I want to welcome Noreen. Hi, Noreen. She's joining us from Connecticut. I believe that's how you pronounce it, USA. So glad you're here, Noreen. All right, let's talk about what we're going to be doing. You know, when we are producing, when we have our job materials, our career marketing materials, which includes our curriculum vitae, it includes our resume for non-academic and non-research jobs. It includes our cover letters. It includes our research and teaching and diversity, equity, and inclusion statements. It includes our LinkedIn profile and our ResearchGate profile and our profiles on other social media platforms. It also includes your profile in the AAS membership directory, which, by the way, as you know, is a fantastic resource that I hope you will take advantage of. And all of these platforms, and also when you interact with people, when you reach out to people, when you are networking virtually with people, in all of these circumstances and in all of these different channels, you are always telling a story of your value to the community, a story of the skills that you have that will move the community's goals forward, that will advance the community's agenda, that will help them solve a problem. And so a lot of times when we deal with challenges like what we are still dealing with the pandemic in particular, we adopt a mindset that is very negative focused. And we tend to focus on the deficits that we have in our experience. I didn't do this, or I did this in a negative way, or I didn't accomplish this, or I didn't have these resources, or I didn't gain X. Whatever it is, it's a negative story that we tell ourselves, because obviously we live in a universe, or maybe a multiverse. I'm hoping some string theorists and cosmologists can help me along with that question. We live in a universe that is very much centered on us, in the sense that we are interpreting the universe and the experiences of other people and the system in which we're operating by our own lens, by our own lived experience. And as such, during a challenging period, when there are problems, when there are walls that impede our advancement personally and professionally, we tend to look at ourselves in the world and in the universe from a negative perspective. What I'm saying, and what I want to share with you today, is that this is part of the storytelling of how we convince colleagues, collaborators, and decision makers in our communities why they would want to invest resources in us for a career, for a job. And if we're telling them a story of the value that we can provide them, well, guess what? We have to talk about it in a positive way. And I recognize that you are seeing this from a negative perspective, but there is positives here. We are going to change the storytelling framing. We are going to tell the truth. We do not lie. We do not embellish. We do not brag. We do not inject fake news into the multiverse. We only tell the truth. And what I want to share with you today are ways that you can actually extract the positive truth from your mind, your soul, and your experiences. We're going to be telling stories about how you took a problem and you solved it during very difficult circumstances, how you thrived. You may not even view yourself as somebody who thrived during this last year. I want to show you how you thrived. We're going to tell a story about how you managed with dynamical parameters, constantly changing goals and expectations and resources. And we're going to talk about how you triumphed. Because in every challenge, there is an opportunity to tell the truth about your positive accomplishments in that role. But what you have to realize is that a lot of the conversation that we have feels like we didn't get what we wanted to get because the situation was so burdensome. It was so all-encompassing. So I recognize that you may not feel like you triumphed this last year. You might be saying to yourself, I didn't get anything done. I procrastinated. I lost time on a project, on a paper, on an experiment, on a theory. My job search stalled. You might be one of many people who was applying for positions a little bit over a year ago. Maybe you even had a job lined up in academia or in another research institution after a year of applying for positions, only to find out that that institution had to pause because they had a hiring freeze in the case of in the situation of the pandemic. You may have said to yourself, my job search stalled, my paper was late, I didn't achieve my goals. So you may not feel like you triumphed, but we're going to change the frame. We're going to change the frame, and we're going to think about, instead of coronavirus, we're going to think about coronavirus. Can you say it with me? Can you throw that in the chat? I want to hear a yas from all y'all, because we're going to take this problem that we had over the course of the pandemic, and we're going to look at it as an opportunity. Thank you, Moira. Thank you, John. Yas to you. Yas, queen and king. We are going to look at this from a positive perspective. And the beautiful thing about this method today is that we are truly only telling the authentic truth. We are not faking anything. We're just going to look at it differently. And some of you may know, thank you, Brenda. Thank you, Noreen. Yes. Some of you already know my story from last year. As you may know, I'm a professional speaker, and most of my income is tied these days to professional speaking gigs. And at the beginning of 2020, I had a clear vision of what my year was going to look like. And it was going to be fabulous, because I had speaking engagements lined up for the whole year, including one in Tokyo. So I was really excited. And then, what happened in February and March? You know exactly what happened. All of those gigs disappeared. The majority of my income vanished within a few weeks. So I thought to myself, I was really upset about this. And I thought to myself, this is terrible news. I lost X. I am stalled with Y. I am not going to achieve my goal. I am failing. I am flailing. That is what was going through my mind. And after a run and a ridiculously amount of cupcakes that I ate, maybe not necessarily in that order, by the way, I began to think of this and realize that this situation with the virus and the pandemic and the lockdown, yes, it was a problem. And yes, it was going to change my own personal and professional goals, the system in which I was operating, and the parameters that I normally would use to solve problems. It absolutely was changing, and it was changing in real time. But there was a way that I could look at this rather than something negative happening to me. I was going to look at it as an opportunity to serve my community. I looked at it as a problem, and I turned into what you do as a scientist. I leveraged my superhero scientific background. My degree is in mathematics, and I studied some physics and astronomy before I was seduced by the dark side. I leveraged my expertise and my thinking, my innovative thinking in mathematics, and thinking about things in terms of equations and problems which you have at your disposal. I leveraged that to look at this and isolate this as a problem that I could then turn into an opportunity. Because if there is a problem that I can define, if I can measure it, I can potentially solve it. That's a benefit that you have from studying science and engineering and technology and mathematics. You have that brain, mind, innovative thinking at your disposal. So we're going to access and leverage all of our toolkits, including the way we were trained to think and solve problems. So we solve problems by first identifying that it is a problem, not a negative action that is happening to me, but a problem. And if it's a problem, then I can solve it. There is a solution, and that is the opportunity. So we're going to change our framing from deficits to experiences. These are some of the phrases that we're going to use. I know it's a little bit early in our talk today, but I did want to just give you an idea of the kinds of wording that you can use in your conversations, in your networking, in your cover letters and research statements, when you do your interview, when you do your job talk. I gained experience in managing projects with moving deadlines, targets, needs, and parameters. Can I get a hands up from everybody who agrees that this is what you learned? You may not have achieved the project goal that you wanted. You may not have achieved the expectation that you set out for yourself at the beginning of the year. And it may have changed, of course, as you went through time, but you did gain experience. You had projects. And I don't just mean scientific projects. I don't just mean the projects you have in your schooling or in your postdoc or in your career, wherever you happen to be. You had projects like, how am I going to go to the grocery store? Or, I need to take a shower today and I am too exhausted from the pandemic. How am I even going to get up today? You were managing projects. They had moving deadlines. They had moving goals. They changed in minute to minute, attosecond to attosecond in terms of the targets, the needs, and the parameters. You managed that. That's a true statement. I leveraged new tools to assemble and collaborate with my team. Of course you did. We've all been Zoom exhausted. We are beyond Zoom exhausted. We are, I think, zoomed out. We are like zoomed into a black hole by now. We are just so like, I can't even with Zoom. I'm sure you can't even either. But the thing is that we have learned new tools, Teams, Slack. I never used Slack before last year. Hadn't even heard of it. But I started using it with different teams that I was involved in around the world. And I found it to be so helpful in assembling and collaborating, communicating, and aligning goals with my teams. And by the way, who were my teams? My teams were professionals. My teams were scientists. My teams were colleagues. My teams were my family members. My teams were my friends. I was leveraging all of these different digital assets to help me better communicate and collaborate with all of the different teams that I interact with. It made me sharper as a problem solver. I developed new methods for time management and project management. That's true. Can I get another hands up? I see a bunch of you put your hands up. Is this true for you too? You developed new methods for time management in particular and project management, how you could actually keep up with a changing goal, with a changing target. You develop methods for actually keeping track of your time. You know, early on in the pandemic and about midway through, so around June, July, I felt myself faltering. I felt myself having real difficulty in getting up in the morning. It was very difficult. I work in my house anyway, but it was still very difficult to get up in the morning and to have your day start at your computer, which is sitting on your counter, you know, or you're in your bedroom or wherever you happen to be. It was hard to create a hard border between my work life and my personal life. How could all of us had this same challenge. And I found it very difficult to do even what seemed like simple tasks that I had not had a problem with working on in the past. So one of the time management methods that I employed was measurement. Who measures the universe better than anyone? Can I get a hands up and can I get a yas that we know that it's astronomers, astrophysicists, and cosmologists? Thank you, Moira. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, by the way. Please correct me if I'm not. Thank you, John. Yes, you know how to measure circumstances. You know how to measure the universe. So what I did was I used my measurement capabilities, my knowledge of how to measure things, and I created a system so I could actually keep track of my time and measure how I was spending my time over the course of days and weeks. I needed what? Data. We operate in truth. We operate in data. You need data. And so I'm sure that part of what you did in managing your time was measuring how much time you were spending on different projects and aspects and tasks, and how much you were devoting to those projects and tasks, and utilizing that time effectively to see exactly what it is that you are doing. And then I started shifting. Once I had the data about how I was actually spending my time, I was able to plan out my day and my days and my weeks in ways that were more effective in my problem solving. For example, I realized that I work best with my most creative aspects, or the tasks that require a lot of brain power. I do best when I do them in the morning. So what I did was I stopped scheduling meetings in the morning as much as possible. We can't always have that type of fantasy to expect that we can get everything we want, especially when we're early in our career or we're looking for a job. But for the most part, I tried to schedule the majority of my meetings in the afternoon, because I knew that's when I would be able to do that type of task, that type of problem solving most effectively. How did I figure that out? From measurement, from data analysis. We shift the skills that we use in science to our professional and career lives. I may have gained, and you probably did, I honed expertise in communicating effectively to accomplish tasks. That's what Zoom was for. That's what, not just the digital assets that we had at our disposal and we learned, but just the ability to get on a meeting with somebody and very quickly get to the point, very quickly be able to outline the problem, the potential solution, and how we could collaborate. I saw myself grow sharper in that type of communication over the year. I really did. Where previously I would have to have meetings that would take place for an hour. I'm sure many of you have the same scenario. We've actually shortened our meetings over the course of the year to approximately a half an hour. This is better for everyone who needs long meetings anyway. But I noticed that I could accomplish more in that half an hour because I could quickly get to the point. I could quickly come up with my summary statement. That was something I learned from the pandemic. I bet you that that's something you learned from the pandemic too. And most importantly, I gained a new perspective in innovative problem solving. And honestly, I know you gained this too, because you had a series of problems. You still have a series of problems, seemingly never-ending problems that you have to solve. And if you think about this, you are a problem solver. When you go for a job, a career, a postdoc, whatever it is that you're going for in your career, you are going to be hired to solve problems. And so when you think about that, you think about the idea that, like, for example, your postdoc, for example, involved a macro problem. That was the project that you were working on, the project you were perhaps initiating and leading. Similarly, for your dissertation, the macro problem was the problem of the dissertation, trying to solve that scientific problem, answer that scientific question. But day to day, week to week, and month to month, you have micro problems that you are solving. And honestly, in the pandemic, I noticed minute to minute problems I was solving. And I want to talk to you today about some of the skills that you gained in that type of problem solving. When you think about the idea that you gain new perspectives in knocking down walls that were impeding innovation, in looking for opportunities rather than being sad about challenges, in looking for new solutions, new innovations, novel directions we could take our work, our research, our projects in, you see that that is actually a universal skill set that is applicable to literally every single ecosystem in the multiverse. And yes, I did say multiverse there because I am going to go on a limb and say, even though I haven't measured the majority of the multiverses, I do believe that this is applicable and universal across universes. This is something that makes people decide to hire you, that they see that you have the ability to knock your head above the sea of challenges and borders and boundaries on the problem and be able to see the problem and solve the problem and bring together resources in novel ways. That is not something I can train you to do when you join my team, my research group, my organization, my department. I can't train you to do that. But you have gained experience and expertise in that sort of thinking over the course of the year. I want to make sure that you share that when you are going out in the community. So I want to show you a resource. This is something I've shared before, and as a AAS member, you actually have this as a resource for you on the website, on the AAS website. And Diane, if you don't mind quickly throwing that into the chat, the link where they can download this template, I would appreciate it. This skill inventory matrix is a way to download from your brain and your soul, admittedly, all of the different skills that you've gained in different experiences. And what I would give you a call to action, I'd give you a challenge. This is your homework assignment, first homework assignment for today, is to try and start filling out this matrix for yourself so you can see the full extent of the value that you gained during the pandemic that you can then market effectively using some of the verbiage I just showed you to job decision makers and hiring managers. So this matrix is a private document. You do not have to show this to your partner, your parent, your PI, or your puppy. It's just for you. It is used as a tool, as I said, to download information, the data that we need, and it is useful for populating marketing documents such as your CV, your customized cover letter, your customized research, teaching, DEI statements, your, getting ready for your job interview, getting ready even for your job talk. So I want to show you this document first and walk you through it, and then I'm going to show you another piece of this document that I haven't revealed before. So on the left-hand side of this table, we put down anything that gave us experience. And by the way, the word experience in this context, what I mean is anything that gave us problem-solving abilities and gave us the chance to solve a problem and gave us a skill. So that obviously involves your graduate work, your postdoc, the job that you're in right now. It involves the pandemic. That can be an experience. It involves how you shifted the problem that you solved and the problems that you solved and the skills that you gained as you shifted to virtual work. It can involve many problems or many experiences that you had. It can be TA-ships or RA-ships. It can be volunteer roles. It can be community roles, leadership roles, committee roles that you have with AAS and any other organization. And of course, it can also include opportunities that you pursued in your family and in your personal life. Since this is a private document, it really doesn't matter what you write here. I just want you to be able to clearly identify all the different experiences you've gained and had. So then we identify what were the technical skills that I gained from this experience, right? I have gained engineering skills. I've gained scientific problem solving skills, including the experimental design, looking at theories, the data collection, the data analysis, the methodologies. I have maybe machining skills. You have telescope experience. You have lab and other instrumentation experience. And you most likely have computing skills and digital asset skills, including programs, platforms, languages, and so forth. So you also have business skills. And I hope you will take a picture of this slide in particular, because this is just a little bit of an accounting, of the many, many, many business skills that you have. And you can see that as we start to think about projects as more than just the scientific projects or the projects that are tied to our job, whatever our job happens to be, which could be a student or it could be a postdoc, it could be our volunteer opportunities, you start to see that there are actually a lot more business skills that you have, and there are ways to present it in a storytelling format to the decision makers who will hire you and collaborate with you so that they see the extent, the depth, and the breadth of your value, the wealth of your problem-solving ability in the form of these skills. So we've talked about the project management, but you most likely have accounting and finance skills. I certainly gained a little bit more expertise in that last year when I lost majority of my income. I gained experience in human resources and training. You may have done that through mentoring in your lab, particularly mentoring from afar. You may have gained experience in procurement and inventory and supply chain management or risk management. That most likely happened for those of you that work on experimental astrophysics or experimental astronomy, or projects that involve the actual telescopes, where you had to identify what were the risks associated with using this time, what were the ways that we could reduce the safety concerns, especially during COVID, especially when we're thinking about experiments. You probably developed standard operating procedures within the context of your research group, and perhaps standard operating procedures within the context of your household and your family, to cushion you against the blowback of the pandemic, to cushion you and your emotional and mental, physical health from the concerns of the pandemic. And of course, the larger questions and conversations, the more magnified conversations we were also having at the same time about social justice. These are very burdensome topics. This is a very burdensome ecosystem. You probably developed standard operating procedures to protect yourself in that. That is something that you can translate to the workplace too. But you also have marketing experience. That's part of what we're talking about today. We are communicating our value. You may have public and media relations experience, grant writing, of course, proposal writing, customer service, operations and facilities, event management, supply chain, quality assurance, and even contracts and vendors. So these are just some of the business skills that you may have acquired. You also gain soft skills. And these are skills like oral and written communication, leadership, team building, diplomacy, negotiation, conflict resolution. If you have a PI, you have extreme risk management and conflict resolution experience. I know that you agree with that. So think about what were the soft skills that you gain. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about this in just a moment. You also gain characteristics, or you notice attributes about yourself. So I may notice that I'm very detail oriented, or I work really well independently, which I did notice that during COVID. I work really well up against a deadline. I noticed that definitely. When I have a deadline, I ask clients, because I do career consulting and coaching with clients all over the world. When I work with a client and they ask me, could you edit my CV, my curriculum vitae, or my resume? I always ask them for a date and a time for a deadline, because I want to make sure that I can achieve my goal, knowing that I work well against the deadline. That helps me. And then I can actually plan it into my day. Talk about time management. So this is our skill inventory matrix. But there's also a problem-solving inventory that we can do as well. So we take this matrix, and now we're actually going to add a few columns at the beginning. And these columns are related to the project and the task and the problem that we were trying to solve. So if we think about the larger project that we had, and you can think about your scientific projects, your educational projects, you can also think about your family projects, your health projects, your mental health project, right? The project goal of my mental health project is to remain resilient and to protect myself from becoming ill in the face of extreme challenges, extreme stimuli. There's tasks involved in that project, and each of those tasks involves a micro problem that I'm trying to solve. So we're going to break this down even further. And what were those micro problems that I solved? What were the solutions that I came up with? And what were the results of the solutions? And then you tie this back to the skills that you gained in each of those problems that you solved, in each of those tasks that you accomplished or tried to accomplish in each of those projects that you were delivered to. This is what we're doing. We're gathering very vital data. So I want to walk you through a couple of different aspects of your value that you have gained through the pandemic and through the larger conversations, the magnified conversations about social justice that are relevant for you to share with yourself, to know what a rock star you are, and to also share with your employers. So first and foremost, you developed a sense of resiliency. You survived. You survived an unprecedented year and a half. It's still going on, and you're alive, and you're here, and you're thinking, and you're looking to improve yourself. That's why you're at this webinar today, because you are looking to improve yourself. That is resiliency. That is resiliency and fortitude and strength in the face of unprecedented challenges. That also is tied to your adaptability and your flexibility as a problem solver. As the parameters of the problem we were trying to solve changed attosecond to attosecond, we adapted. We were agile. We summoned our bravery to be able to solve the problem and know we could solve the problem, even if it took extra time to look at the parameters and evaluate the different solutions. That is flexibility. That is something money cannot buy. I cannot train you to be flexible in your problem solving, but you have that naturally as a scientist, and you have expanded on that this year. The tenacity and the fortitude that you honed in the face of these challenges is clear. You developed a creativity in looking at problems and measuring stimuli, in analyzing systems and data, and providing value to yourself first and foremost, and to all the stakeholders you serve, including your family, your partner, your employer, your advisors, your mentors, your colleagues, your peers, and so forth. You also developed, and I know this isn't exactly a soft skill, some people would say it is, but depending on who you talk to, you developed a great sense of team building and working, being able to collaborate with a team across the world. And you also gained and demonstrated to yourself that you can be successful independently. We are all independent always. Most of our work in a career circumstance is done with teams, that's true, but we still have to be able to lead without authority, which I'm going to talk to you about in just a moment. And that involves a really strong sense of independence and interdependence and self-reliance. So another soft skill and attribute that you developed this year, as I just mentioned literally a moment ago, is this concept of leadership without authority. And my good friends and colleagues, Christine Kutsakaki and Sarah Andrews, together with two of their collaborators, recently wrote this book, Leading from the Middle, which I highly recommend to you. And they talk about this concept of leading without authority in the sense that we are all leaders in our lives. It doesn't mean that we have to be appointed or anointed with the title leader, manager, team lead. It means that we have the ability and the self-initiation to be able to say, I will lead myself through this system. I will lead my career in the way that's positive. I will take ownership and autonomy over my solutions and the ability to solve problems. I will look at this as an opportunity that I can take advantage of and leverage my skills to be able to solve, to serve my community, to be a leader. There's a lot of aspects associated with leading without authority, and I want you to consider taking a look at this because the three of us have actually talked about this. They are certainly the experts in this, but it's quite a concept to be able to think about yourself as a leader without being able to say, I am being appointed, or my title or my job title or my PI said to me, you are now leading this team. You're always leading the team. You're always leading yourself. You're always leading your career. And you demonstrated this year. So you also demonstrated to yourself that you work in difficult and dynamic situations, that you have essential communication skills, oral and written and over digital media. You gain those time management skills and goal setting skills. The goal setting that I noticed in myself, it changed over time. I had to change my expectations, but that's part of what we do in projects in the quote unquote real world. When we're in our jobs and our careers, there will be changes of expectations. There will be changes of resources. There may be changes of budget. There may be changes of personnel, of time on telescopes, on time on projects. All sorts of resources will change. And we have to be able to move with that and still solve the problem. That's achieved through effective goal setting. It's also achieved through negotiation. I feel like we gained a lot of experience in negotiation here this last year. Negotiation, not just in terms of salary and compensation package or time on telescopes or opportunities, but negotiation in terms of I'm going to negotiate with myself that I am not going to beat up on myself because I wasn't able to achieve this goal today. I'm going to set a different goal for tomorrow, hint, hint, wink, wink, and I am going to try again a different way. I am going to negotiate to try it a different way. That is negotiation. You gained experience in collaboration, and I think because of the fact that we were using digital platforms for communication and collaboration and teamwork this year, we also gained experience in cross-cultural competency. So one of the pleasures and one of the pleasures, the beautiful aspects, and the honor of being in astronomy, astrophysics, and cosmology and planetary science, in my opinion, is that you have the chance to collaborate with nerds all over the world. Not every industry or sector or field has that. We see that a lot in the sciences, but astronomy by its nature is an international endeavor. That is a privilege. Not everyone has the chance to interact with like-minded individuals from multiple cultures, nationalities, and experiences. We leveraged that this year, and we really learned a lot about cross-cultural communication. If I'm on Slack with a colleague from Nation X, Community Y, and Ecosystem Z, how can I best communicate so they understand what I'm saying? How can I tell a joke, or how can I be ironic without insulting another person? How can I use my understanding, and how can I gain more understanding about the social norms and the cultural aspects of the communities in which I engage so that I can be respectful, reflective, and expressive in my communications? this is part of what we gained this year. We may not have thought about it, but I really feel that this was a big aspect of what we gained. We gained all those business skills, as I mentioned to you. The project management is really quite something. Some of you may know that project management is an actual thing, quote unquote. It's a real thing in the sense that it actually, there's an institute, I think it's called the Project Management Institute. They have a certificate that you can get, which gives you letters next to your name. It's called the PMP, Project Management Professional, I believe is what it stands for. And it's a certificate that is highly, highly valued across sectors, academia, industry, and so forth. And it shows me that you have experience in all of the different elements and steps of bringing a project to fruition from ideation to commercialization. This is something that you gain in astronomy in your education and training experiences, but you've actually gained more insight in it as you have endeavored within the pandemic. So I want you to be thinking about how you gained experience in project management. And I want to give you a homework assignment. Here's my second homework assignment for you today. I would encourage you to take a look. I believe the website, and Diane, do you mind throwing that in the chat? I believe the website is the Project Management Institute. This is the formal institute that actually issues the PMP certification. And on that institute's website, you can actually gain, I believe, a list of all the different steps that go into a project that professionals in this field have actually isolated and identified, lead up to a project's fruition. And I would like you to take a look at that and start creating one-to-one matches in your mind between, thank you, Diane, between what you did over the course of the last year and the different steps that they have identified are the project management steps. I guarantee that you will see a lot of one-to-one matches. My guess is that you will see between 25 to 50% immediately of a one-to-one match between what they say is a project management step and what you did this year to manage your projects, including your emotional and mental and spiritual health. But I suspect that it actually might be higher. But I would give you that homework assignment. You gained experience in proposal writing. I certainly did. When I lost my income, I had to develop a new way to market myself, to communicate my value and let my audiences, my stakeholders, my customer base, my employers know how I would be able to add value for their clients, for their audiences, for their students, their members, their postdocs right now. That is proposal writing. That is marketing. And yes, I recognize the types of proposals that you write are not necessarily like the ones that I write, although I was involved this year on a very large proposal with a grant from the NSF. I'm talking about proposal writing, the skill of proposal writing, of writing a document that markets your value and convinces that other party to invest resources in you. That's part of proposal writing. That's part of marketing. You and I also gained experience in opportunity identification, especially as a goal that you might have had shifted. I started 2020 with the goal of getting a research job in astronomy at a university. As I finished my second postdoc, that was my goal. But as economies shifted, as we shifted in terms of our own personal priorities, our own family and mental and emotional health priorities, not to mention our physical health priorities, and we outlined that for ourselves, we changed in how we observe and interact with our ecosystem. And as such, we began to see opportunities where we might not have seen opportunities before. We began to decide that what we had vision for ourselves before is not aligned with who we are now, because we did change in this last year. There's no going back. We will have a new sense of quote unquote normal, but it won't exactly be that way because we individually have shifted. I certainly shifted in terms of my own personal priorities. I saw it in myself. And I made an effort to isolate it, to identify it, to measure it, and even track it. It's a very difficult thing to do, but it is possible. But it was useful for me. One of the ways that I did that was through a gratitude journal, honestly. And this is something you've heard about, but I find it very helpful in career development to actually make a note for yourself how you, as you move forward in time, what you are grateful for in that moment. And it could be, I'm grateful for this delicious cupcake, or I'm grateful for my great friend Diane and how we can have a chat about whatever, or I'm grateful for my experience to do X, or I'm grateful that today I had breath in my body, I had eyes to be able to see, I had my existence to be able to experience this. That's one of the things I noticed about myself, is that I became more clear about myself, about my personal priorities, as I outlined my gratitudes, the things that I was grateful for. And I noticed over time the shift of my personal priorities. This allowed me to look for different types of opportunities. I view myself as a professional differently than I did a year ago. A year ago, I had, and I mean now literally a year ago, while the pandemic was raging and after I was able to get clients. So now we're talking about in late April, early May of 2020, I shifted my marketing, I shifted my proposals, I shifted my mindset. I started trying to innovate and solve a different problem, help my clients be successful, by giving webinars, by speaking on topics that were relevant to the community at the moment. I shifted. That changed me, and it allowed me to look for new opportunities. And now I see myself differently than I did a year ago when I had all those clients. I see myself doing something differently. And I see myself reacting and proactively responding or proactively interacting with my communities in a different way. That is all about opportunity identification. And guess what? You, as a scientist, as a professional, your job is to keep your eyes open for all opportunities. You have to do that. That's how you advance science. That's how you will advance the goals of your employer. So the fact that you've gained this opportunity identification robustness this year is a translatable skill set that you can take on the road and you can share with your potential employers. So you also gained accounting and finance. I certainly gained creativity in accounting and finance this last year, especially as I began to think about my finances differently. I want to give you another homework assignment, and I want to ask you if you can identify for yourself, is there a problem? What problem do you have right now in front of you? And I don't mean I need a job. That's a big problem. You could look at that problem, but I mean more like a micro problem. I am having trouble connecting with employers. I've applied for jobs and I've gotten 0 interviews, or I've gotten a 2% return rate or conversion rate from applications to interviews. I'm having trouble trying to communicate with my PI. I'm not understanding what my PI is saying to me in terms of expectations. Identify that problem. And then discuss for yourself, identify what the parameters are of the problem. In other words, what is actually influencing the problem? What could be used to turn that problem around, to create a solution? You gain technical skills, of course, in virtual platforms, scientific problem solving from a distance, of course, and certain types of experimental design, depending on your work. Now I want to talk to you about the reframing aspect. And you are welcome, by the way, to continue throwing your questions, your ideas, your thoughts, your yeses into the chat, because I do want to hear from you. And I'm going to stick around after we're done to answer any additional questions that you may have. So we reframe. We now have identified that we have gained a lot of positive skills in this last year. We have identified that in the face of unprecedented challenge, difficulty, we succeeded because we survived, because we did gain skills, because we did solve problems. They may not have been the problems that we envisioned that we'd be solving for ourselves a year and a half ago, but we did actually achieve something. So now when we talk to our potential employers in our documents and in our wording, when we're having networking sessions, when you're meeting people at the AAS 238th conference coming up, when you're networking, when you're engaging people on social media, we're going to reframe the story. We're not going to talk about that I lost time, something negative happened to me, I didn't do X, I couldn't do Y. We're going to talk about it in a different way. Always, again, tethered to the truth. So the first reframing is about losing time. You might be thinking to yourself, I lost time. I did not get a chance to finish my experiment or pursue my theory because of the lockdown, and therefore did not finish my dissertation on time or did not finish my paper on time. Okay, that may be true, But when you're sharing that information with an employer, they need to know what lessons you gained, what you learned, what skills you acquired that will help them move their agenda forward. Remember, the job search process is not about what you, the job seeker, can get from me, the decision maker. It's what you can do for me and with me. We have to reframe everything that we talk about in terms of problems that we solved and skills that we gain that will help the employer with their goals. So instead of saying I lost time and didn't do X, I'm going to say I gained expertise in designing, managing, and executing on a project in the most challenging of circumstances. And although we didn't meet our original goal of X, we achieved Y. We acquired knowledge about Z and Z-like systems. I gained skills in X+1. You see how I'm doing this? I am sharing a positive story of the truth about my expertise. Instead of complaining, I am talking about what I did to turn this coronavirus into a coronavirus. Do you think I need what do you think, Diane? Do you think I should change that? I'm trying to play around with that. I've been playing around with that phrase for a year. This is the first time I'm actually revealing that phrase. Can you guys throw in the chat, give me a yas if you think that I should go for that, and give me a hell no if you think I should retire that phrase. I am well open to your comments. So a yas to keep and a hell no to get rid of. Reframing number 2, you didn't achieve the goal. I was so emotionally and physically burdened by the pandemic that I feel like I accomplished very little. I get that. I do that too. I feel that way as well. I'm going to reframe it. I'm going to say I learned how to change my expectations and customize solutions often in real time. This is relevant and useful to your organization because in this role at the Space Telescope Science Institute, I will need to adjust parameters quickly. In this role as a faculty member at the University of Arizona, I will need to teach online, at least for now, and adjust to hybrid teaching scenarios. This skill set that I gained will give me expertise to be able to roll with those punches, to be able to adjust and take in, track, and measure parameters that help me to define the problem oftentimes, or redefine the problem oftentimes in real time itself. By changing my expectations, by looking at new opportunities, by looking at new resources that we could potentially capitalize on. You see how we're doing this? Number 3, reframing is how we manage to clarify what we did in the face of lack of resources. I had a scientific problem. I was trying to prove X. I was trying to look at a black hole. I was trying to look at gamma ray bursts. But because of the pandemic, I wasn't able to access my X, Y, and Z resources, my colleagues, my time, my money, my experimental facilities to solve the problem. And therefore, I didn't solve the problem. Woe is me. So instead of woe is me, how about this? I gained expertise in creative problem solving, including the analysis and reallocation of vital resources needed to successfully identify and achieve a new goal. Boom, mic drop. Now that is marketing. And again, the honor associated with this marketing is that we only tell the truth. But we have to be kind to ourselves. And I really do think that part of what we're doing today in communicating our COVID responses and challenges in our job and career marketing materials is demonstrating a kindness to ourselves. Because this has been a difficult year. This has been very burdensome to our health. And you know what? I'm not going to reflect or relish in the negative aspects of it. Instead, I'm going to look for the positive elements that I was able to gain from this experience. What were the positive elements that I was able to extract from this? I became stronger. I became a better communicator. I became a better project manager. So please only tell the truth about the positives that you gained and experienced. And think in terms of problems that you identified and solved, skills that you gained and honed, opportunities that you identified and pursued. These 3 elements or these 3 categories are exactly why someone hires you for every single job. We've talked about how you can clarify that today. We're going to think about ourselves in terms of those things too. And what I want you to leave this talk with today is the essence and the sense that every challenge that we have is an opportunity to learn, grow, prosper, and to showcase to ourselves, most importantly, and then to the people that we communicate and collaborate with, to our communities, to our potential employers, how flexible, agile, and strong we are as problem solvers. Because you know what? There may not be another pandemic like this, but there will be many, many, many more difficulties that we will deal with in our lives, in our careers, in our professional and personal existences. And if there's anything that this pandemic has given us, it is the gift of demonstrating that you are rock stars in the universe and you can manage, survive, and thrive beyond this moment in time and space. That is the gift that you give yourself. I want to thank you so much. This has been, as always, a true privilege and a pleasure to work with you, to speak with you, to interact with you. I'm here to answer any additional questions you have. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. It's Elena G. Levine. Tweet. Let me know how you think we did today. How can I help you? What kind of questions do you have? I'll stick around for any questions. But I just want to conclude our conversation today by saying I don't need to wish you good luck because you don't need it. But I will say enjoy your continued amazing adventures towards your unicorn career. Thank you, AAS. You rock.
Thank you, Elena.
What can I do for you? What questions do you have for me today? If any of you have any questions. All right, and I see we have some shy astronomers. I know it's not because you're shy. It's because you're planning your Nobel Prize speech because you've already won. That's totally cool and sounds completely legit. So no problem. If you have questions for me, you can always contact me afterwards, elena@elenalevine.com. Now, I do see a comment. Thank you, Brenda. I appreciate your statement. John, you have a point, and I want to say this. I really appreciate what you said. I've always thought about the power of positive thinking is a bit much, but you make a good point about turning negatives into positives. Thank you, John. My point, and I really want to emphasize this when I talk with my peeps, you, other science-educated professionals just like you, is that we are not engaging in fake news. We're just sharing the true value of what we gain from an experience. Yes, we're taking a negative and turning it into a positive, but we are not doing it in a sleazy way because we are only telling facts. We are only telling the truth. And I think too often we get used to, particularly when we're doing scientific papers, we get all used to the idea of sharing negativity very directly because that's part of what science is, right? We set out to do this experiment and we didn't achieve the goals. We still report on it in many cases. Well, when we're applying for a job, we can't talk about our deficits because they're not hiring us for our deficits. And they certainly won't hire us if we only share our deficits. But if we share what we gained, if we share what we can do to help them, that is positive thinking with an honorable element to it. That's what I'm talking about. So I appreciate you pointing that out, John. Any other questions?
There looks like there's a question in the question and answer. It's from Alessandra. It has an institution. Is there something that we can do for candidates who apply for a job during these trying times?
So Alessandra, thank you so much for that point. And I really appreciate you bringing that up. The idea of what can institutions and also what can mentors do. I think, first of all, practice kindness. Recognize that this is not a normal situation. Number two, I think I give candidates the benefit of the doubt. If you saw that over the last year, they didn't have many papers or literally any papers, I would not judge them on that. I would look at the full extent of their record. I would look at how they actually are presenting themselves. I would also encourage applicants to share these other skills that they gained. You could even put it in the job ad that we're looking for resiliency, we're looking for project management, we're looking for communication skills, so that job seekers who may not know about this topic that we talked about today have a guide to be able to see what they should be talking about in their job marketing materials when they're applying. So I think bottom line is if you can create a structure and a mechanism within the institution where you are communicating that it's okay that you didn't achieve the Nobel Prize this year, or you didn't achieve the papers that you wanted this year, or you didn't have the results on a project that you wanted to achieve this year. That's okay, because what we're looking for is the full record and the full extent of what it is that the candidate brings and will bring to bear on the problems that we have to solve in our ecosystem. So it takes a lot of thought. It really does. But by sharing that information with the job seekers and sharing it with the search committee, clarifying it with the search committee, with the hiring manager, decision maker, I think we can make an impact. I hope that's helpful, Alessandra. And we have another question. I think it's also from John. Thank you, John. Do you have any resources about how to update your LinkedIn profile when you're thinking about changing careers? So that's a great question, John. And by the way, for a future webinar, we will be talking about what to do when you do pivot, when you do change your careers, and how to do just that in terms of your marketing material. So if you can stay tuned for that. But meanwhile, I did do a webinar for the AAS. You can find it on the AAS website or on their YouTube channel about utilizing LinkedIn and leveraging LinkedIn to share and market and communicate your value. That might give you a good start. So stay tuned for another webinar coming up in the next few months, and take a look at that previously recorded one. I hope that's helpful. Are there any other questions?
And if anyone wants to ask live, I can allow them to speak during this meeting. Although if they're too shy to put in the chat, I don't know. Anyone?
Again, I know what it is, Diane. They are doing their skill inventory matrix. So it's not that they're—
Oh, that's true.
They are working very diligently on those homework assignments, which honestly, respect to you guys for doing that. All right, well, in that case, ladies, gentlemen, gentlefolk, my pleasure. Again, thank you so much for your kind attention. Diane, thank you so much for all your support and friendship. It's been wonderful working with you, as always.
You're welcome. And please do stick around afterwards. All right, goodbye, everyone.